All right, welcome everyone. I'm so excited to introduce you to today's guest. Let me introduce him. On today's episode, I interview a father, a husband, an entrepreneur, and battle ropes coach who has over a decade of battle rope coaching, teaching, and programming experience. A former Onnit Battle Ropes master coach and creator of Battle Rope Education, he is currently the Battle Ropes and Fitness Manager for Living.Fit. He's also a retired Marine Corps Sargent and combat war veteran, and the chief instructor at Mobilization Training Battalion, School of Infantry West in Camp Pendleton, California, leading an advanced group of combat instructors teaching combat skills to non-infantry Marine Corps units of 40 to 150 Marines each month from 2015 to present. Moreover, he is the creator of Leader of Leaders, a virtual and in-person leadership development, consulting, and motivational speaking company. Welcome to the Winner Circle, Aaron Guyett.
Man, it's a pleasure to be here. Honored to be on the show, Derek. Appreciate it.
All right, I'm honored to have you on as well. So let's get right into it. Aaron, it's odd times in our world right now, but this is a podcast where I try to look at a lot of the positives and shine a lot of inspiration into our world. So what do you love about the world right now, Aaron?
Well, first of all, I see probably way too many silver linings when people around me are complaining about how bad it is right now and how hard their life is and how difficult things are going. I almost want to like scoot back into the crowd because I'm like, my life is actually gotten way better, and it's not like a brag thing. I'm actually like almost like anxious saying that because I do know so many people that have had a really tough go at it, and this has really hit them incredibly hard. But for us, so our big thing, my family first, like we started homeschooling. I never would have thought to homeschool. It never would have crossed my mind. It was never sort of in my equations or anything like that for how I would raise my kids. And so this situation is kind of, we just didn't want our kids in front of a screen all day long. So we said, hey, we'll homeschool for a little bit, see how it goes. And now I don't think I can do it any other way. It is absolutely incredible to be able to spend that much quality time with our kids. It is absolutely incredible to walk them through not only the academic stuff that they would normally learn in school, but then also there's a bunch of extra things that I can teach because I'm like, whoa, while we're teaching, while we're here, why don't we learn about leadership? Why don't we learn about communication? Why don't we learn about logic? Why don't we learn about philosophy? Why don't we learn about God? Why don't, like all of these other things that I wouldn't have thought to make it a part of our curriculum, even in just the times that we have with our children outside of school. But the exciting part of homeschool, man, I looked at it, very much like a business venture. Like we need to have vision on where we're going. We need to have purpose. We need to have values. And how can I institute this as part of just our household? So now it's just become part of just the way in which our household runs. It helps my wife and I get on a better page in terms of communication. We actually have a better relationship because of it. Obviously there are challenges and trying times, but that's like kind of the beauty of, to me, like life is in those challenging times. Like that's where we learn really more about who we are, or maybe some of our shadows or some of our weaknesses or some of our problems. So then we can start working on those things in ourselves to be better parents or better husbands or better wives or, whatever it might be. And so to me, that's probably the greatest thing that I've gotten from this fairly tumultuous and challenging time. The other part is having to go like pretty much all digital, all online, all kind of remote allowed me, again, more time with my family, but also I get actually more time with people like yourself, where I wouldn't have probably been able to have that. Hopefully at some point we would have been able to cross paths in person. But now it's almost certain, right, that I can, as long as I want to have that relationship, I can make that connection at least online, even though it's not the same as hugging somebody in person or high-fiving or whatever. But it still is an incredible way to learn and glean from other people around me. So for me, like those are some of the great silver linings. It has allowed our business at Living.Fit to really increase, because we already had kind of set up for digital. We just weren't doing as much digital. And so then all of our focus became, hey, how do we help expedite and improve the quality and create more quantity at scale, for people that are in need. And so I've been able to also mentor and lead other gym owners. I owned a gym for a long time. Other educators, and help them kind of create, like, lose that gap of the market. So they basically the COVID and lockdowns and all these things created this massive gap. But then, okay, how do we close that gap for you again, so that you can bring your value to people that need it, and then of course then you'll get value in return, in terms of money or whatever it might be. So been able to mentor and lead a lot of people in that, and watch them just totally take off and do really well in spite of a very challenging and difficult time.
That's beautiful, Aaron. Your children are really lucky to have you and your wife homeschooling them. And your digital clients are also really lucky. I really admire all the silver linings you've pulled from this situation. And those silver linings are always here. There's opportunities or threats, and they're both there. Which one will you choose? And it's all a matter of choice. I'm going to see the positives, the opportunities, the silver linings, or am I going to see everything that's wrong with the world? Because they're always there.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's a matter
Absolutely.
of choice.
100%.
So in this world, I feel it's so important that we understand our mission. Companies, corporations all have missions, and we as individuals ought to be aware of our mission, our North Star, our guiding compass that guides us through all our things, our business, our family life, our friendships. But that mission runs through them all. So my question to you, Aaron, is what is your mission here on this earth, this reality plane?
Yeah, I mean, I really do believe, obviously I can kind of dive into the deeper stuff, talking about belief and purpose and values and what I believe about those things, because I think oftentimes my understanding of it is different than somebody else's understanding. But to make it kind of easy, I really believe that God put me on this planet to help develop leaders of leaders. I mean, at the end of the day, whether it's through fitness, and the cool part about fitness is, fitness is a great analogy to, developing a human, and then developing that human into a leader, and then developing that leader into a human that can develop other leaders. So the physiological just parallels, and perfectly, I think, explains a lot of the psychological stuff that we endure and move through in order to be able to not just do, but be in a way where the outpouring of your being is understanding that you have spheres of influence regardless of who you are and where you're at in life. And once you understand that you have spheres of influence, now you can be responsible and accountable to those spheres of influence in a way in which you can empower them to understand that they have spheres of influence. And the ripple effect there, like my whole vision is kind of encapsulated with sort of a question, which is, or imagine if every person understood that they could have an indelible effect on somebody else, right? And took that responsibility, owned that, to their core, how much different I think we would be. Because oftentimes I think we get stuck in this very selfish bubble where it's more about me and less about you. And I think if we could flip that, not that obviously self-care isn't important. I need to care for myself in order to care for others. But if we flip that, I think the weight of those of that psychology is often just really unbalanced and really unhealthy. So we could flip that, man. I think that our world would be in a much better situation. And the cool part is, if we look at history as our judge, or as the way to see like how we're doing, I think we're doing a whole lot better. But we definitely have a long row to hoe going forward, right?
So where did you learn this worldview, this ideology? When did this come into your paradigm?
Yeah, that's those are all great great words, right? So I think I've had a few paradigm shifts in my life, and so the greatest one for me was going into combat and then coming out of combat in the Marine Corps. Sort of left me like really nihilistic because I sort of confronted God, and I was like, well, if if you're really God and you really have ultimate control and all this all powerful, all all knowing, all loving, all good, then you will kill me so that I can know that you actually exist, right? So I can see that there's, whether it's heaven or hell, or there's eternal connection to you or eternal disconnection from you or whatever, and then I didn't die. So then what that did is that pushed me into this, and talking hero's journey or whatever, that pushed me into this like supreme nihilistic abyss where I just became more and more and more nihilistic, and nothing had value, right? My life didn't have value, other lives didn't have value, the world didn't have value. I was just a speck of biology on this larger vast canvas of physics, right? And I'm going to live and then I'm going to die, and so then there was no purpose, right? And that's a pretty crappy place to be. So obviously there's a lot of things that came about from that. And then the beauty is that our choices bear with them consequences. So I had to start to reap a bunch of consequences from just making bad choices, from getting more and more nihilistic about existence and me and purpose and all of that stuff. And that forced me so deep and so low that I was like, okay, well, clearly there's consequences. If nothing has value, then there shouldn't be any sort of consequence, right? There should, like, a choice can just be arbitrarily chosen, and then there's just an arbitrary thing that happens after, that's not a direct correlation or direct consequence to that choice, because nothing has value. So it began my journey into understanding, well, what is value? What are beliefs? What is this thing? And so then, is there God? And that began just an incredible journey, which for me led me to Christianity, led me to belief in Christ. And obviously we don't have the time of day to drop down all the philosophical worldviews as to why, and all the arguments, and all the reasons why I chose that. And I'm not trying to, proselytize or say that anybody else needs to choose this thing. But that's where it led for me. And that made all the difference. Now, this purpose is a deep-seated, unrevocable, immutable thing that is a part of the essence of who I am and what my spirit is, which I think will live, on this plane of mortal existence and in this physicality that we experience. But I also believe that it will follow with me even into eternity, where I will be overjoyed to continue the process of learning, continue the process of developing, as eternity just continues on and on and on. And of course, that's my belief, that's my standpoint. I'm not trying to say that everybody else has to believe that, but that's for me where I was able to get sort of a foothold, if you will, and then from that foothold build something that actually made sense and wasn't so nihilistic and wasn't so purposeless. And it all started with a really immature prayer before I jumped into a very gnarly combat war situation.
So let's talk about this, from nihilism to Christianity. So how did this, you said immature prayer, how did that come into play? Where did you get that prayer from? And how did you choose Christianity of all the religions to be yours?
So I was born into at least I would say pseudo-Christian home. Maybe what somebody said something today. I heard something that I was like, "Ooh, I like that." But it's like churchianity, right? So like, where you go to church, say this, you do this, you do that, and then there's bad music, and and then you go home and then you do whatever the heck else you want, right? It doesn't really, like, you did your little churchy entity thing. And so I grew up experiencing that. Funny because because of churchianity, my parents are sort of in this like really weird unknown paradigm now, where they're not Christians, but they're not believing, but they're which I think is a cool place to be, like questioning, but there's a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of times there's a lot of nihilism or pessimism that can come from that, right? Because we're turned off by the things that humans do, which obviously humans can suck, right? Like you said before, right? You get a choice. You can see the bad and you can see the good, and then we get a choice, and then the choices that we make have consequences. So the last thing that I wanted to do was to be a Christian. So when I was nihilistic, I went into everything that I do, I just dive in head first and swim to the bottom of the pool, kind of a thing, right? So I did like self-realization fellowship. I did a bunch of like study and work in Buddhism. Went to India, did a bunch of work with Hinduism, and really like tried to examine and see if I could pull it a lot of like spiritual humanism and universalism and stuff like that. And the problem for me that I kept encountering is every time philosophically I would start to step out some of those beliefs, it would hit a wall, and I would be like, like the next step would either be absurd or the next step wouldn't exist. And I'm like, I feel like it should be able to go deeper. And again, so this is my experience. Whereas then, so this last ditch effort, I'm like, well, obviously there's some sort of value, something that's there. I just can't put my finger on it. I will give Christianity a go. And so I'll do, again, anything that I do, like self-realization fellowship, I was meditating 1 to 2 hours a day, right? And then doing all this repetitive chants and stuff like that. Going to the ashrams,
Something like that. Yeah.
Right?
I get you.
Ashrams, right? And then I had a really good friend of mine that was a self-realization fellowship monk, and so like doing work with him. Same thing in like Buddhism, same thing, right? In Hinduism, like going to India and like seeing it firsthand. And so then same thing with Christianity. It's like I'll go to church, I'll join a men's group, I'll read the Bible all the way through, and I'll pray every day. Unfortunately, like you're faking it. I think the oftentimes like the first kind of initial approach, like praying, like what do I pray to? How do I pray? What is prayer? What does that even mean? Like all of these like weird ethereal things, which now I feel like I've got at least a better understanding of at least my approach in that. God is still this like thing that's way unfathomable, so that's gnarly, right, in itself, but at least in my discipline, right, discipling under Christ, it's like I can kind of see, okay, I can see a path and kind of follow that path. And so I did that. And the crazy part was when I read through the Bible, then at the time I was like, I was telling the truth, like generally speaking or whatever. I don't know down to the exact every moment or whatever, but I was a truthful guy. I believed in law and order. I believed in justice, right? I think most humans kind of have these beliefs, whether we ground them in objectivity or some subjectivity or social construct or whatever, but we all still kind of have this, right? Rape is wrong, pedophilia is wrong. There should be justice for people that do bad things. We just feel these things intrinsically, right? So, but the thing that I was doing at the time was I believed that love, I confused love with lust, right? And so at that time, I was basically like very carnal in my sexual desires. And like you name it, I went to the bottom of whatever sexual desire pit that was. And so when I was reading the Bible, I felt like every other word, every other verse was sexual immorality. And now I've read the Bible multiple times all the way through since then. That's not how I read it. That's not what's happening now when I read it. But at that time, I was just getting like massively convicted day in and day out, just punched in the face with this. And I'm like, and honestly, I just didn't want to let go of that part of my life. And I realized that I didn't want to let go of control of my life. So it was sort of this microcosm problem that really showcased the entire problem of my humanity, my own spiritual work and my own spiritual destiny, if you will, right? And so I just had this massive problem with letting go. And so it was May 21, 2009, the day I let go. You know, most Christians will tell you the story. We're like, oh, I let go and I let God, believed in Jesus Christ and everything got great and it was amazing. I got all this money, you know, like people say all sorts of weird stuff in my perspective, right? It's cool if that happens and that happened to you. Like, that's amazing. I love that. That's great. Not the case for me. Everything went way worse. Like, I got crappy sleep. Like, sleep is my superpower. Being a Marine, it's like I can fall asleep anywhere. I can sleep for as long as I need to sleep. I can wake up after a short sleep and feel like fully functioning, right? Like that's my superpower. I was like losing sleep. I had a really sharp widow's peak that came down to about here. And as you can see, I totally lost that. Like at that time, like in 3 months, boom, that hair loss gone, right? I lost every single close relationship that I had. And most of them I had to choose to lose because I realized that I was seeing women as objects and not seeing them as human, right? And I was seeing them as objects to fulfill my sexual desires and not treating them as I would if I believed in the sanctity of life, which obviously Christianity purports the sanctity of life. Now, Christianity, the church and people and humans in Christianity have totally screwed that, you know, throughout history, but that's still a belief. That's still a command. That's still, you know, and I wasn't loving humans, right? I wasn't loving God. I wasn't loving humans. And so that, like, to me, I had to chop off a bunch of relationships because I was not seeing them as human. I had to apologize to a ton of people, ask for forgiveness, and like for my wrongdoing, for the things that I did that was wrong. And so my life was really a struggle. I was on the struggle bus. It was at that time when, so 2009, May 21, 2009, do the math, that was the big bubble popping. That was a year after. So a lot of people were still trying to like pay their training or whatever, like via credit card and whatnot. So I actually lost half of my business at the time, right? Which was a gym, and 75% of the trainers with that business at that same time. So I just went through this gnarly crucible, this gnarly like refiner's fire for about a year and a half. But then once through that, then I started to step out. Like you said, choices have consequences. Well, what would be my choice here? And I would just make the choice, even if it made my life harder, because I was like, well, my life can't get any harder. And if it can, like, bring it on, whatever. I'm just going to choose, you know, to do the thing that I believe that I'm called to do. And then began my sort of upswing, and the journey started to really go the other way. And I've still had a lot of like tough and problems and all sorts of things. Like, I'm not the hunky-dory, you know, story guy. But I realized, like, yeah, choices do have consequences on this plane of existence. And if we can not reject our belief, our values, our mission, our purpose, right, in order to, you know, give us some sort of selfish desire or thing that we think that we earned or whatever, we don't have to remove those in order to get rich or get famous or whatever. We can stay on the path with that, if that is truly what we're called to do, right? If that truly is our purpose. And then what you receive is exactly what you should be then receiving. And sometimes it's, you know, fame, and sometimes it's riches, and sometimes it's just a really solid relationship with somebody, you know.
Mhm.
And so that's my wife, right? An incredible relationship with her, an incredible relationship now with these incredible gifts, blessings that are my 3 kids, which I mean, just amazing miracles, right? Watching that whole thing transpire, their development and whatnot. And then just some incredible, right? That incredible season with Onnit Academy, this incredible season right now with Living.Fit, the incredible season now with the Marine Corps Reserves, right? And then having that incredible time, seeing my time in the Marines before as also something incredible, even to the point of seeing, you know, I was sexually abused when I was a kid, whatever, even seeing like the beauty and the silver lining in that, right? Seeing that from a completely different perspective. Now, not having to be a victim, now I can, right, help empower other people and give people their power back, instead of them feeling like they're victims and they're stuck in this cage, right? Because this thing happened to me. It's like, no, we can break those chains. We can break that cage open through forgiveness, and you can actually choose to forgive people that you even despise, right? Love your enemies, right? You can choose to love them, and that changes everything. You have far
Mhm.
more now power in your court. You have far more ability to be responsible for things that otherwise you'd just be like, oh, it's the government's fault, or it's, you know, this person did this bad thing to me this one time, so I just can't do that. It's like,
Mhm.
no, you can do that.
If we choose, right? If we
Yeah,
choose,
yeah.
um, everything can be happening to us, or it can be happening for us. Again,
Oh
that
yeah.
binary choice. Which path will you walk? Will you walk on the one that will lead you to further growth, or the one that will pull you down? To us is happening
Yeah,
to me, or it's happening
yeah,
for me? And I
yeah,
try to
100%.
choose for me. Um,
Yeah.
so from then till now, now happily married, 3 kids. What does love mean to you now versus then?
Yeah, love is, oh. So obviously I confuse love with lust, which
Yeah,
I don't, you know, I don't think lust is love at all now. That's a big paradigm shift right there.
yeah.
Uh, so love for me, like you said, 1, it's a choice. 2, it's an action. 3, I do think you can earn it. I don't think we always earn it, and sometimes we're given it anyways, and that's a tough one. That's a tough place to be, right? Where you're given love and you know you didn't earn it, you know you don't deserve it. It creates a connection with that person or that being or that relationship that is far tighter, and far more thankful and grateful for like every single moment. And I believe ultimately love, ultimate purest most incredible form is sacrifice. um, and sometimes it's like small sacrifices. um, you know, like for instance, here's a great anecdotal story about love. I hate doing the dishes, or hated, I have to say that now, it's past tense. I hated doing the dishes. And I'm really good at doing the dishes. I can do them super fast. My mom is like a kind of like myself, like fairly analytical, really hard worker, and she taught me to do the dishes really well. So I can do them, and I can do them quick, and also really well. But I don't like doing it. I grew up doing the dishes, like at least one meal a day, if not multiple meals a day. I had an older brother and a younger brother, and oftentimes we split that. Um, and I'm like, I could pay somebody to do the dishes. You know, my wife could do the dishes, whatever. But my wife's love language is acts of service, and I have not found an act of service that is better than the dishes yet. Maybe there will be an act of service that's better than me doing the dishes that I'll discover, and I'll be able to move into that. But me doing the dishes in the morning and during my like morning routine, time with God, and right before anybody wakes up, to include the sun, uh, and which in California is saying a lot, right? Because the sun comes up a little earlier than where you're at.
Oh yes.
uh, you're coming into the dark days, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so doing the dishes, I did them like painstakingly, and it truly was like a sacrifice. It sucked. I didn't like doing it. I didn't feel any sort of worth from it. Like my number one love language is words of affirmation. So all she would have to say is like, "Man, you did a beautiful job doing the dishes. I love you so much." And I would be like sky high on cloud nine, right? But most of the time, like she just wouldn't say anything. And honestly, like it wasn't because she didn't love me, but her thing is acts of, her love language is acts of service. So she would just, make me dinner or something like that. And so she would think that that's me, saying I love you to me, whereas I'm waiting for her to say I love you, like actually say the words, right? So not getting any of those things. So it was like a struggle and a sacrifice, but that sacrifice led to one, doing it anyways, even though it was hard and it sucked and I wasn't getting, my love language met, my love met or whatever, but doing it not because am I doing the dishes because I want her to show love to me, or am I doing the dishes because I just love her and I'm going to do it regardless, whether she loves me in return or not. I want to share and show my love to her. So I'm going to come with my 100%, whether she comes with her 100% or not. If she comes 30%, it's okay. I can still come with my 100%, which in this case is me doing the dishes every morning. But then the craziest thing happened. I started to actually enjoy loving on her, despite whether she was responding and reciprocating that love or not. And it actually opened up more love for me to want to give her. Then I think what most of us think is that we have to be loved in order to give love, right? Or at some point we got to get it back. And what I discovered is that's absolutely not true. The more I gave, the more I wanted to give. And so, and that is, I think, the beauty of sacrifice. Like the what is it? Jesus tells the story of the wheat berry has to die in order for all these wheat berries to grow, right? All of this wheat to grow. That little seed has to die in order for this growth and this development. And I believe that that's a lot of times these epiphanies or these paradigm shifts that we get. It's like we slough off this old nature and we realize there's this new creation, there's this new nature that we can step into. And it's even more awe-inspiring than the last one. It's even more incredible than the last one. And that to me was the dishes. Now I love the dishes. It's my time of meditation. It's my time of prayer. It's my time to just be with nature. I get a look at our beautiful outdoors once the sun starts to rise. And so now it's just such this total different paradigm shift in my head. Whereas before it was truly felt like a sacrifice and it was tough. And that to me, I think is like a good metaphor, a good story that is ultimate love, right? So ultimate love is sacrificial. And I don't mean obviously people need to kill themselves or let people kill them or whatever. But I think dying to certain parts of us opens up new room for new creation and new things to appear that will be far more amazing than the last.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Aaron. I'd like you to share another story. Can you share the story of how you met your wife? What did that look like? What did that process look like on your journey? I think you might be frozen or just taking a really long sip of water. Hey there. Okay. You froze for a second there. Did you catch what I said?
No. When did you lose me?
I said thank you for your story. It was a beautiful story. Then you took a drink of water, and then it just like froze on you drinking water. And
No.
I asked you if you could tell us another beautiful story, and that's the story of how you met your wife. And what did that process look like?
Initially, we met. We both call it our dark days. She was, I guess, sowing her wild oats, if you will, and I was as well. We were both really lost and trying to find ourselves and trying to find purpose in life. She had, just lost her mom a couple of years prior. and her mom was like kind of her rock, right? Her foundation. And then for me, I was going through my spiritual discovery after being completely nihilistic and hitting my kind of rock bottom or whatever. And so we met. It was very much lust at first sight, more than love at first sight. And it was like we were dating. We weren't really like serious. I'm sure, she was seeing other people. I was seeing other people. And we were, if we asked each other, we were really honest about that, which is why I think our relationship can have such good trust and integrity now, as we were honest even in the beginning, even when we were doing things that now we look back and we see as like obviously mistakes and things that we shouldn't be doing. But yeah, and so then when I had my salvation moment, if you will, that May 21, 2009, obviously she was one of the people that I called and I had to apologize to. Told her that I treated her like an object and not a human, and and that sucks, and I apologize. And she was overjoyed that was a turning point in my psyche and my decision making. She was really happy for me, and I think she was also hopeful that she could hit something like that in her own life. And I could be wrong, so she might say no, but that's as I see it, right? And we've told this story with each other present multiple times. But yeah, so then we went through a period. So she actually started working for me around that time. And she worked for me because I became a business partner with another guy who she was working for him as a trainer with his kind of training gym, and then we partnered up. So then she fell kind of under me, which was super weird and really awkward. And I was like, oh, this isn't going to end well, because of obviously our previous engagements and relationships and whatever. But what that actually turned into was a friendship. And then that friendship turned into like a legit old school, like think 19th century, 1800s courtship, right? Where like I asked her dad if I could court her. Courting her meant like abstaining from sex and, just getting to know each other and, like holding hands and like kissing, but then that's it. And obviously coming from where we came from, like that was really difficult for both of us. But then that courtship led into then like actual serious premarital prospects. And so then we did a premarital counseling. After the premarital counseling, I proposed to her. She said yes. And then, so we went a little over a year, a little under a year, a little over a year, a little under a year, being together in a relationship, but abstaining from sex, which then created this like massive, like the trust that we had gained from each other by telling each other the truth just became exponentially greater because we knew that we could both abstain from sex and hold true to another person, which was, where both of our values were, right? Monogamy and whatnot. And so we just gained an incredible amount of trust in that. And we betrayed that trust initially in the very beginning, but then we actually were able to gain that trust in each other. And then our relationship began, obviously it was focused less on each other and more on, what our purpose is eternally and what God is calling us to, the cool part is if that's the case, like, it was explained to me like it's like a pyramid, right? And you start at the elbows. So I was at the elbow, she was at the elbow here. And instead of trying to meet here, we both are looking up and looking toward what our purposes are. And we are supporting each other 100% and encouraging each other 100% in those purposes. And before you know it, like our relationship has only gotten better. The sex has only gotten better, right? The obviously adding kids didn't amplify the problems. It amplified the incredible, communication and relationships that we were already experiencing, which I think a lot of times you throw another human in there because you think it's going to solve the problem, and it just adds another human to the already current problem, right? So yeah, that's kind of how we met, and then that's sort of been our journey now.
Beautiful. And I think you mentioned a few of those keys that keep that relationship going strong. And that's communication and attending to each other's love languages. What are some other ways you guys keep your relationship strong?
Yeah, sex, which obviously, like in masculine, feminine, I'm not saying that, I know there's some females or whatever that have a way higher sex drive or whatnot, but it's really hard to have a sex drive, and it's easy for me to understand this, sympathize with this, but I can't empathize with it because it's just never really happened to me. But like, if you have kids, there's like body image stuff going on there. There's hormone fluctuations that are crazy. And then there's this other being that needs your love and attention and dependency or whatever. But through all of that, trying to keep sex at least communicated and as regular as we could and as we can. And then, so communication, sex, and then, yeah, the big thing is like our beliefs, right? Like keeping our beliefs being the same have really helped us walk out problems, walk out issues, right? Because I'm not here to say that we're without issues. We've had some knockdown, drag outs. We've said things to each other that we've both regretted. We've had to ask forgiveness on some, pretty tough topics, tough things, whatever. But having a foundation of beliefs that are the same means the foundation isn't like off kilter, and then working toward, a similar calling or similar purpose. And then keeping communication strong, and then keeping sex going. And then the other big one for us is finances. Like, she's just been really good with budgeting. I've been really good with budgeting. She's really frugal. I'm fairly frugal. So having that matched up has really helped us as well, because like, you can look at the stats, right? Like, finance is like one of the number one reasons why marriages dissolve. And then communication would be the next one, and then sex would probably be the third one or whatever. But yeah, but then the belief system as a solid foundation, and a purpose as a solid foundation. Like, we have a family purpose and we both believe it,
What's your family purpose?
It's super long.
Okay.
But basically it's a very similar one as the creating leaders of leaders, developing not children, but developing competent and confident adults, and doing that in love. And obviously that's a seasonal purpose for us right now because we have 3 kids. But ultimately that even rolls into any of her girlfriend relationships. Obviously my leaders of leaders thing parallels directly with that too. So yeah, the family alignment is right there with the individual alignment too.
Great. So we've mentioned leaders of leaders a few times now. So let's talk about that. Let's take a moment and just discuss, introduce the audience to what that is, leaders of leaders.
Yeah, so it's a passion project of mine. Oftentimes it sits on the back burner. I speak about it from time to time. I'll do consulting with businesses from time to time. I've done a bunch of work with the Special Forces experience, revolving around this whole concept and idea and purpose that is leaders of leaders. So yeah, it's really just like what I said before, like my purpose. So developing leaders of leaders, but creating a systematic, right, intention to leaders of leaders. So a systematic approach to intentional leadership. And it's basically just understanding that you have spheres of influence. And as long as you have a belief system that you can defend and believe, actually believe. And so oftentimes we'll give lip service to our beliefs because that's what we want to believe, but our actions betray that, right? Or vice versa, right? We act in a certain way, which betrays like the beliefs that we state or whatever. So, so a belief is, to me, it's like something that you can defend and something that you own, right? You actually walk out then you have a purpose, and then you have values. Now you can start to help develop other people and help other people see that they can build that within themselves, and then they can then lead others in that same path. So it's less about, a lot of times people think like, oh, so you're the leader of all these really big leaders, like you're the leader of CEOs, or you're the leader of coaches, or it's not that at all. It's helping Derek understand that he has leadership potential. It's not Aaron's leadership potential, it's Derek's leadership potential. And I want to empower you to be the best human that you can be, the best leader that you can be, and then have you be able to help other people, raise other people up in their humanity, with their own purposes and their beliefs and their leadership potential. And a lot of times I think we equate leadership with like control, right? Where it's like, well, I have all these followers and they do my bidding. It's like, man, that's okay leadership, I guess, but that's not great leadership. I don't even know if that's good leadership. I think good leadership is like, yeah, my employee is an incredible employee, but she will be far better moving to this next career path or next choice. And I can be excited for her and help her and encourage her to that, versus I could control her, keep her here, and keep her working for me because that works for me, right? And that's the antithesis of leaders of leaders.
So what is the most common gap you see keeping an individual or a leader from becoming a great leader or being a great leader? What is that gap?
Communication, 100%. It's one, being able to articulate the ideas, right, in a way in which you can understand them. But then two, also shutting my dang mouth. And I need to tell myself this all the time because obviously I'm fairly verbose. But shutting my mouth and listening to what Derek has to say so that I can help Derek be Derek, not help Derek be Aaron, right? I can help her be the best human that she can be, as opposed to make her, do really good stuff for me so I can feel good, right? Selfishly. Yeah. So yeah, and that's all communication, right? That's active listening, and that's being articulate, being succinct if you can, right? Using as few words as possible, but enough to be able to teach the concept or bring the concept across.
Yeah, those are all great points. So that's one of your projects, Leaders of Leaders. The other is being known as master of the battle ropes. So let's trace that way. There's so many origin stories we could go back to, but let's go get into the origin story of you as a master battle rope coach.
Yeah, and that started. It started with John Brookfield and his tutelage and his mentorship and his teaching and his coaching. But really, I've got to give credit where credit is due. John Wolfe and Mark DeGrasse back in the day, which then turned into John Wolfe. Mark DeGrasse saw me as this, hey, you could be sort of the personhood, the person that's representing battle ropes here with Onnit. But then that turned into John Wolfe asking the question, hey, do you want to do it? And so then I asked John Brookfield, of course, I was like, hey, the last thing I want to do is ruin our relationship. You are an incredible man. And he is just an incredible guy. And so I called him up and I was like, hey, this is what, Onnit and Onnit Academy is asking me to do. What do you think? Here is the way in which I kind of visualize and see that happening. Obviously, there's some nuance and some differentiation between, what you do and what you teach with the ropes. There's crossover, of course, because it's the ropes. And then there's some stuff that obviously is very similar, if not the same as what you do. So what do you think? And he was like, yeah, you should go do it and hit me up if you need any help. And then we were able to kind of officially pass the torch on a Living.Fit interview that I did with him very recently, like back in the beginning of this year. And he was like, so if anybody has any questions, this is me passing the torch, on to Aaron Guyett, which I absolutely am honored and totally appreciative of. but yeah, so then it began. It was like, okay, let's build a certification. Like, first of all, they were like, can you build a certification around this? And I was like, yeah. Just I'll say two words, and that will let you know that we will be able to build a certification. Those two words are wave and physics. And nobody in the fitness industry really understands wave physics. If you don't understand wave physics, then you don't understand, right, how it correlates with mechanical physics, which is how we create progressive overload, how we understand our mechanics, how we understand our power output, right? When we do normal weight training, barbell, dumbbell, kettlebell, body weight, whatnot. And yeah, so then built this whole program. Obviously with Onnit Academy, they ended up centralizing to Austin. My wife was like, we're not moving to Austin. And I was like, yeah, I don't really want to move to Austin either. We're moving to Northern California. I was like, okay, cool. We'll move to Northern California. And so then when they centralized, guys like Marcus Martinez, myself, Sarah Jameson in Vancouver, right? We obviously then ceased to exist as sort of the master coach for Onnit Academy. But the cool part was, it was like, hey, we have all the material, all the content that you wrote and did for us, but you also have rights to that as well. You can do whatever you want. So for me, I had already started Battle Ropes Education, and I was kind of independently contracted with Onnit Academy through Battle Ropes Education. And so I just turned it into a much bigger structure and more of a sustainable structure, from levels all the way, sort of an ascendancy model. From like ground floor is like, you're going to get basic understanding and a few exercises and some workouts. Top floor, you're going to get deep into the science, the research, the principles and the concepts. And then we're going to also cover all the ground in between. And so then I was given the opportunity to bring that structure into Living.Fit for all of their programming, for all of their modalities, for all of their master coaches. And I say master coaches because we're not masters of anything, we're continuing our mastery. But if you say mastery coach, it just sounds really weird. So you say master, we say master coach. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I was able to build that structure into Living.Fit. And so now that's what we deliver with Living.Fit, whether it's body weight or kettlebells or battle ropes. And then all of the other modalities will be slowly probably added. As we go along, we're getting dumbbells, we're getting slam balls, we're getting, a bunch of different equipment that we can then take those principles and concepts of programming, which work, whether it's a battle rope or a kettlebell or body weight or a dumbbell, and bring that into these other realms, but then create an ascendancy model. So we can meet you wherever you're at, and then help you kind of choose your own adventure in terms of education and or workouts and programs based on what it is that you're looking to accomplish, be it education or just losing fat, right? Or anything in between.
So every hero on their journey encounters a threshold that is the unknown, and a lot of heroes get stuck at that point. And I know you've crossed the threshold many times, when you joined the Marine Corps, when you created your business, Battle Ropes Education, when you sold Battle Ropes Education, when you got married, all these different thresholds, like where you're feeling that like scare, like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. And the thing that holds so many back is fear. So talk about that, the process of crossing the threshold and overcoming fear.
Yeah, so I think us humans are trauma averse. I think just naturally, right? Nobody wants to experience physical or psychological trauma, right? It's all stress and it sucks. Our society has gotten really good at eradicating most of the normal human encounters with stress and trauma. And so that's where I think a lot of my work with the Special Forces experience has kicked in. I mean, it's all about post-traumatic growth. It's about, on purpose, creating trauma, shaking you up so that you can learn that you can overcome trauma and you can actually grow from it and develop from it. Obviously at a really young age, just whether it's the sexual abuse stuff, which is a psychological trauma, but then even into whether it's sports or working out or losing friends or, whatnot, that sort of began my dabbling in PTG, right? Or understanding or crossing the threshold, as you call it, right? I sort of dabbled in it and dipped the toe, really. It wasn't like diving in. But then the Marine Corps was like the first time where I really dove in. And then the Marine Corps kept setting up circumstances and training events and things like that, where I had to continue to cross that threshold and throw myself totally in order to be able to survive, in order to be able to even thrive in that environment. And then, of course, combat was another huge one. There was a lot of, risk of death, like almost every single day. Not every single day, but almost every single day. And I mean, obviously, the fear lives with you every single day, or you can have the fear. For me, I just that prayer at the beginning actually really helped me with that particular threshold, because I just thought I was going to die anyways. So like the fear of death wasn't really there for me, but there was other anxieties and things that you have to cross. Is somebody else going to die? Am I going to accidentally, kill somebody that doesn't deserve to die? Things like that, which are pretty brutal things to have to wrestle with when you're 19, 20 years old. But yeah, and so then the more I did it, the less scared I was of doing it. So then when it was like, oh, you're out of the Marine Corps, you've done all these things, but the cool part is I've gotten this now new psychology, this new mindset of being able to cross all these thresholds. So it's like, here, can you lead a team of people? I don't know. Let's give it a shot. I did an okay job, when I had training wheels of the Marine Corps structure of how to lead people. Let's see if I can do it without the training wheels. And then just dove right in. And the thing is, like, now I just know that I'm going to make mistakes. There's going to be times that suck. There's going to be some difficulty. It's just inherent to anything that you do, but you're going to make mistakes. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be times of difficulty, even if you don't cross the threshold. So it's like, well, I cross the threshold or I don't. Like, either way, I'm going to experience these things that nobody wants to experience. I'm going to cross the threshold. I'm just going to jump right in. And so it just became far easier. And now, I was able to obtain an undergrad, like a Bachelor of Science in Business Management. I was able to get a master's in organizational leadership because of it. I was able to go back into the Marine Corps Reserves because of it. I was able to choose into marriage because of it. And it's like, a lot of people are like, oh, you seem to be doing that quick. It's like, no, I counted the costs. There's a lot of them, but like there's costs if I don't do this. So like, I'll count the cost. I'll seek some wise counsel, but then at the end of the day, it's like, well, like you said at the very beginning, I either choose to do it or I choose not to do it. And for me, it's like, I don't want to look back. I don't want to look at myself even in the present and be like, oh, I coulda, shoulda, woulda. It's like, no, I'm just going to do it, and worst case scenario, I fail and I suck, at that particular thing. And I know, okay, maybe I don't do that, or I reset, re-engage and hit it again,
Yeah. And it's reps. The more reps we put in, the easier it is. So for a hero standing on that line, plagued by fear, scared to go in, jump in, even dip their toe in, what would you whisper in their ear?
Oh, regret is a far easier choice to make now, right? But regret is something that is going to follow you forever. Whereas making that choice right now it's just a momentary affliction, right?
Beautiful.
It's such a momentary affliction. Like, just dive in, because the worst thing that'll happen is you come out and you find yourself like undeserving of the thing that you tried to get, right? And that's a great lesson in itself, but you're not going to learn it without crossing the threshold,
That's right. So along every hero's journey, we meet many challenges and temptations, and you've mentioned a few you've overcome. Your descent into nihilism, being sexually abused in your youth. Out of all these challenges of your life and of your journey, which has been the greatest challenge, and how did you overcome it?
My greatest challenge is dying to myself daily to uphold the discipleship of a being that is like far beyond my even ability to understand, right? And so sometimes that's found in like dying to myself, uh, dying to my selfishness and doing the dishes, right, for my wife, or whatever, or not wanting to do the dishes for my wife. Or it can be, the dying to the self can be in these small little things, but it was also in some pretty incredible things. Like I had to die to the old me of, wanting it my way, and getting, these lustful desires fulfilled, but then actually now reaping much greater reward in a much deeper relationship that's far more robust idea of love from my sort of minuscule and immature idea of love back then. So yeah, it would be the daily dying to self, because sometimes it's like really, again today, again I got to do it again. I feel like I just did it yesterday, or I just did it 5 minutes ago. And we're gonna consistently make mistakes. That's probably one of the most human things about us, right? But our mistakes don't have to be who we are.
Our mistakes don't have to be who we are. That's very much true in my opinion. I believe that to be true as well. So that is really great. Of all these lessons you've learned in your life, what has been the single greatest lesson you've learned that you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, there's one that I normally share, and so I'll share that, but then I'll share another one too, because I don't know if it's the single greatest. The one that I normally share is, if I were to have listened to the wise counsel, and I want to emphasize wise counsel, not just people just telling you what to do, right? But if I were to have listened and adhered and walked out what the wise counsel in my life told me to do, I would have suffered far less than I did. Not to say that the suffering is bad, because it ultimately led to maybe something greater. So that's another thing, and I think that's probably the greatest lesson and that can help us cross the threshold. So listening to wise counsel is the one I normally share. And so now that's what I just regularly do. I find wise counsel, listen to what they have to say, implement it in my life immediately, stop like looking around like, oh, should I do this or whatever? So that's just something that just has now become a habitual response, a routine response. But then I think the greater lesson, or the greatest lesson, is that we will never be able to map out this butterfly effect of our choices right now. And I think oftentimes that's what freezes us from crossing that threshold, is because we're trying to map out, well, then this choice will lead to this, will lead to that, will lead to this, will lead to that. And in a perfect world with the greatest ideology, yeah, maybe, right? But utopias don't exist, right? They will never exist. That's the whole point and definition of utopia, right? Is this unachievable greatness of society. And so stop overthinking all of the things that could transpire, and do the thing that's put in front of you. Like walk into the thing, be the man that you're called to be right now, be the woman that you're called to be right now in this moment, instead of trying to overthink who that being then is 20 years from now, or 5 years from now, or whatever.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Aaron. And I want to be responsible with your time, so I'm just going to ask you our final questions that we ask each and every guest. The first question, in 3 words or less, how would you describe the experience you're having on this earth?
In 3 words or less. To use more than 3 words.
Sure, you could use more than 3 if you want a phrase.
Oh shoot. God is love. 3 words.
God is love. I like that. And then the final question. I believe we all have the ability to be magicians, and I'm going to use some of my magic powers, and I'm going to transport us into the future. I'm going to transport us into the future, and we're going to be sitting aside an 85-year-old Aaron Guyett. I would like you to take a moment to reflect on who that 85-year-old Aaron is. what is the legacy you've left behind, and what does your life look like in that year?
So I'm 85. I've been able to now walk out this principle that, we tend to overestimate what we can get done in, an hour a day in a week, and we underestimate what we can get done in a decade, and even now it would be 4 or 5 decades, right? And so the legacy that I have left is an indelible impact through generational change by being extremely intimate and wading through the chaos and the difficulty of human to human interaction and relationship that is often just incredibly challenging, wrought with, misconceptions and bad communication and problems, but also filled with just incredible love, incredible connection, incredible epiphanies, and aha moments that then lead into this whole idea of developing leaders of leaders. And that's the generational impact. The legacy there would be, it's exponential, as opposed to, I made a bunch of money, or I built this really big company, or the generational change and the exponential transformation, that would be the legacy that I would want to see and look back on and be like, hey, I gave it my best, I gave it my best. And I can know, going into this next season, which is death, I can know that I laid it out on the table. I gave it my very best. And hopefully I'll be able to see some of that generational change and some of that leaders of leaders development occur right in that time frame in my life.
And in that time frame in your life, who will you have around you?
Oh, I mean, family for sure. Hopefully my wife outlives me. I didn't think I would live this long. I've got like a tattoo that's like "Live fast, die young" here. When I was like in my 20 stupid years. Actually, I think I got that when I was like 19. So I didn't think I would live to this day. So I'm incredibly grateful for the fact that I'm 39 years old, stepping up into my 40s. Hopefully my wife will be there with me. Hopefully my kids will be there with me. And then I've got some pretty incredible relationships and some friends. But honestly, if it was just my wife and my kids, I would be absolutely overjoyed and incredibly happy and satisfied with just them. But who knows, maybe they'll have their families with them and I can see their kids. Maybe I'll have some great grandkids. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I want you to take a snapshot of this Aaron Guyett in your mind. Feel how this would feel to live this 85-year-old self. And I'm going to take us back to the present. And this 85-year-old Aaron sends you a message. What does he tell you?
I'm hoping at this point in my life, because if he were to talk to the 20-year-old would be like, yeah, whatever, old man. But obviously with the whole wise counsel thing that I said, I hope that he says, hey, keep up the good work, stay with it, it's worth it. Right? Stay in it, stay with it, it's worth it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Aaron. It's been an honor and a pleasure to chat with you. And we just scratched the surface. There's so much more that we could talk about of your amazing journey. So I hope we could have another conversation down the road. They could find you on Instagram at Aaron Guyett, at Battle Rope Exercises, at kbkliving.fit, leadersofleaders.org. That's all on your Instagram. That all links to that. Where else could they find you?
So leadersofleaders.org and aaronguyett.com. Right now, they're being sort of revamped. So those will be back online in very short order. So those are the two kind of websites. And then just what you said, Instagram, Facebook, I'm on both of those. I'm probably on Instagram more than I'm on Facebook. But I'm always okay. I always love a direct message, and I'll always respond. So yeah.
Thank you so much. To close every episode, we raise our fist and we bring it in for a digital fist bump.
Boom. I love it.
Thank you, Aaron. It's been an honor.
Thank you, Derek. Yeah, the honor has been all mine.
We'll see you soon.